Before my time, I understand that this committee had 3 hearings on lost children under the Trump administration. At that time, it was only 1,000 lost children. And if I remember correctly, there was a certain member, and I won't give her name, but her initials are AOC, put on a white suit and went to the border to protest this 1,000 lost children. And now, my friend, the New York Times, actually, this is not a Republican rag, by the way. I reported in February of 2023, HHS had lost over 85,000 unaccompanied children. And my question to you is, as this process continues, I think you're in over your head. I think the administration has buried you. I don't think there's any way you can keep track of what's going on the southern border, and we're losing children by the droves. And when you talk about background checks, how is it that one individual could get 20 children? How does that happen, Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, thanks for the question. Actually, I think I heard 2 questions there. The first is on 85,000 lost kids. Again, not answering a phone call, that does not mean a child is
Secretary, let me tell you something. If my wife calls one of my kids, and on about the second call, we don't know where that child is, it is pandemonium around the Moore household. And I got news for you. When you're losing children to the tune of 85,000, there are parents somewhere in this world, and I don't know where the parents are, that are sending these children here for some reason, and they're being trafficked. They've been used for child labor. And again, this is the New York Times. This is not a Republican talking point. This is not a Republican rag. This is the New York Times talking about the mismanagement of this administration of these children and how we've lost them. And so my question to you is, how does one sponsor get 20 children? If we're background checking, in fact, how does that happen?
Congressman, every sponsor must go through a background check process. Every sponsor must be able to show—
Mr. Secretary, what if they're a foreign national? Are you background checking if they're foreign nationals? Is it possible that MS-13 is bringing their people across the border and taking custody of these children and putting them into trafficking and other unspeakable sort of things? Is that possible?
Remember, I mentioned in my opening testimony that the vast majority, 80–90% of the kids that we place are placed with the parent.
If you're not doing bioidentical, if you're not identifying these people biometrics, how do you know they're the parents?
So there are many ways to provide or to prove identity. You can look at
So they can prove identity to take custody of children, but not to vote. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So you're saying voter ID doesn't need to be required. There's no way to verify somebody's identity. But if they're going to take custody of a child in a foreign country, you're saying they do have an ID or they need to have an ID.
You said voter ID?
Yeah, what I'm saying, in other words, is you're requiring ID for these people supposedly to take these children, but then you say, many times on the left, they say, well, voter ID is racist or discriminatory. So explain to me, how is it that you're verifying the ID of these people if they don't have IDs and nobody can get IDs?
Thank you for the question. Identity documents are one of the many tools that we use to try to ascertain the relationship of the child with the potential sponsor. But there are many other things that we'll do. If there's a sponsor that has not provided sufficient identification and proven that tie to the child, we can turn to things like fingerprinting if we need to.
So you think this person that got these 20 children is related to all 20 of those kids? Is that what I'm hearing, or?
What I can tell you again is that every sponsor must go through a vetting process in order to be able to sponsor any child.
But if they're a foreign national, we do vet those people as well, or?
Anyone who wishes to apply to sponsor a child must go through the process. If they decline to go through the process, they cannot sponsor.
Well, earlier one of the members mentioned that a certain sponsor had kids delivered to different addresses. How do y'all cross-reference that? How do you justify that?
I'm not familiar with any case that you're referencing, but what I will tell you again is when we—
That was a Florida grand jury case, by the way.
Yeah, when we go through the background checks, we ascertain any number of things, including residence, where the child will be placed. We check on the household members in that place as well, in the home. So we go through the process of not only vetting sponsors, but we also check with those members in the household.
So in the Florida grand jury case where the one child was delivered to the strip club, did y'all vet that location? I mean, was that considered a house? I mean, is a strip club now considered a house for children being trafficked or lost?
As I mentioned, Congressman, we can discuss the Florida report. There are many issues that we have with that report.
Let me ask you a real quick question. I'm going to change subjects real quick. And many of the members have mentioned it, the Kayla Hamilton case, where Mr. Martinez, he came across as an unaccompanied child and then ended up killing Ms. Hamilton. How many UAC's unaccompanied children now do we have in secure facilities? Are you housing in secured facilities? Do you know?
We use secure facilities if we don't believe that we can manage the children or keep the children that they would be around safe, or perhaps even for the safety of the individual. I don't have that number. I can take that back to my team.
Yeah, we'd be curious to know that. I'm kind of trying to figure out how in the world I had this situation in one of my areas where a young lady was raped by a 31-year-old that identified as an unaccompanied child, and he came to this country and then drug a 14-year-old girl into a restroom and raped her, and yet he was identified as a child, and I don't know how you understand like a 31-year-old. How do y'all identify that as a child? Is there any test on age when the kids come here? Do you get any documentation on birth certificates, anything like that?
As you're going to many of the documents and the ways that we try to ascertain not just the child's identity, but also get back into the background of anyone who wishes to sponsor.
How does a 31-year-old identify as a child?
Mr. Chairman, gentleman's time has expired.
I
Ms.
yield back.
Ross.